December 7, 1941, 1:30 in the afternoon. Hawila Kaliohano stands outside his home on the Hawaiian island of Niihau. He hears it before he sees it, a mechanical scream. Metal tearing through sky, then impact. A Japanese Zero fighter, painted in the rising sun insignia of Imperial Japan, cartwheels across a field just yards from where he stands. Smoke. The smell of aviation fuel. The propeller bent like twisted fingers. The cockpit opens. Out climbs a pilot. Young, disoriented, his flight suit torn. Kaliohano doesn't know it yet, but 6 hours earlier, this man participated in one of the most devastating surprise attacks in American history. 2,400 Americans dead at Pearl Harbor. The Pacific Fleet crippled. Battleships burning in the harbor just 150 miles away. But here on Niihau, population 136, nobody knows about any of this. The island has no electricity, no telephones, no radio broadcasts, no connection to the outside world. So when Airman First Class Shigenori Nishikaichi stumbles from his wrecked aircraft, Kaliohano does what any Hawaiian would do. He extends his hand in hospitality. What happens next will be remembered as the Niihau incident, a week-long ordeal that transforms a remote island into a battlefield, where neighbors become enemies, where an unarmed man and his wife face down a trained military pilot and loaded weapons, where loyalty is tested and a community discovers there are lines that should never be crossed. This is the story of America's first ground, Battle of World War II, and it takes place on the most isolated island in Hawaii. To understand what happened on Niihau, you need to understand the island itself. Niihau is different. 17 miles west of Kauai, this small volcanic island spans just 70 square miles. It's the westernmost inhabited island in the Hawaiian chain, the most remote, the most isolated. They call it the Forbidden Island. In 1864, a Scottish widow named Elizabeth Sinclair purchased Niihau from King Kamehameha IV for $10,000. The island passed to her descendants, the Robinson family, who maintained strict control over who could visit and who could stay. By 1941, the owner was Aylmer Robinson, Harvard-educated, fluent in Hawaiian. He lived on Kauai but made weekly visits by boat to check on the island. Under his stewardship, Niihau became something extraordinary, a place where ancient Hawaiian culture survived intact. 136 people lived there. Almost all were native Hawaiians. Hawaiian was their first language, their only language. They lived without modern conveniences. No cars, no electricity, no phones, no radios. Time moved differently on Niihau. The Robinson family's closed-door policy meant the islanders remained largely untouched by the rapid changes sweeping through Hawaii in the early 20th century. They lived as their ancestors had lived, fishing, farming, raising livestock, speaking the language that was disappearing on the other islands. But Niihau wasn't entirely isolated from the world. 3 residents had connections to Japan. 61-year-old Ishimatsu Shintani, Enisei, a first-generation Japanese immigrant, worked as a beekeeper. He'd married a native Hawaiian woman and made the island his home. Then there were Yoshio and Irene Harada. Yoshio was 39, born in Hawaii to Japanese parents, a Nisei or second-generation Japanese-American. His wife Irene, 33, had been born Umeno Tanaka on Kauai. They'd moved to Niihau with their young child, seeking a simpler life. 3 people, Japanese ancestry, living peacefully among native Hawaiians. Nobody thought anything of it. Not yet. December 7, 1941, 7:48 a.m. While the residents of Niihau wake to another peaceful Sunday morning, 353 Japanese aircraft launched the first wave of an attack on Pearl Harbor. Airman First Class Shigenori Nishikaichi is among them. He's flying a Mitsubishi A6M20, tail number B11120, launched from the aircraft carrier Hiryu. The Zero is Japan's finest fighter, fast, maneuverable, deadly. Nishikaichi is part of the second wave of attackers, tasked with providing air cover and strafing targets of opportunity. The attack is devastating. At Pearl Harbor, battleships explode. The USS Arizona goes down with over 1,000 men trapped inside. The USS Oklahoma capsizes. Hundreds of aircraft destroyed on the ground. More than 2,400 Americans killed. Another 1,178 wounded. It's over in less than 2 hours. Now comes the hard part: getting home. The Japanese carriers wait far to the north. It's a long flight back, and not all the planes are going to make it. Nishikaichi's Zero has been hit. Bullet holes puncture the fuselage. The fuel gauge dropping. The engine sputtering. Before the mission, Imperial Japanese Navy planners had designated Niihau as an emergency landing site. They believed it was uninhabited. Intelligence was wrong, but Nishikaichi doesn't know that. All he knows is that his aircraft is dying beneath him, and Niihau is the only option. At 1:30 p.m., 6 hours after the attack, Nishikaichi's Zero comes screaming over the island. He belly lands in a field near the village of WWII. The impact is violent. The plane skids across volcanic soil, tearing apart as it goes. When it finally stops, Nishikaichi sits in the cockpit. Dazed but alive, 30-year-old. Hawila Kaliohano reaches the crash site first. Kaliohano is a ranch hand, tough, practical. He takes one look at the rising sun insignia on the aircraft and knows this pilot is Japanese. He's read newspapers during his trips to Kauai. He knows tensions between America and Japan are high. The oil embargo, the frozen assets, the diplomatic breakdown, something's wrong here. Before Nishikaichi can react, Kaliohano confiscates his pistol and his papers, maps, documents, diagrams, everything the pilot was carrying. But here's the thing about Hawaiian culture. Hospitality isn't just a custom, it's sacred. Despite his suspicions, Kaliohano and the other villagers who gather at the crash site treat Nishikaichi with traditional aloha. They help him from the wreckage. They offer him food. They throw a party in his honor that afternoon. Nobody speaks Japanese. Nishikaichi speaks limited English, so they send for Ishimatsu Shintani, the elderly beekeeper. Shintani arrives at Kaliohano's house. He and Nishikaichi speak in Japanese. A brief exchange. Then Shintani's face changes. Color drains away. His hand starts shaking. He turns and leaves. No explanation. No translation. The villagers are confused. What did the pilot say? Why did Shintani react like that? They send for the Haradas. Yoshio and Irene Harada arrive. Another conversation in Japanese between Yoshio and Nishikaichi. This one longer, more detailed. And then Yoshio Harada makes a choice. He doesn't tell the native Hawaiians what Nishikaichi has revealed. He doesn't mention Pearl Harbor. Doesn't mention the attack. Doesn't mention the deaths. Doesn't mention that America and Japan are now at war. He keeps the pilot's secret. The day passes. Evening comes. The islanders go about their business, still treating Nishikaichi as an honored guest. Then at night, someone turns on a battery-powered radio. The news crackles across the airwaves. Pearl Harbor has been attacked. Japanese forces have struck without warning. America is at war. Martial law declared across Hawaii. All boat traffic between islands banned immediately. The villagers hear this and turn to Nishikaichi. Now they understand. This isn't a lost pilot. This is an enemy combatant. A warrior who participated in an attack that killed thousands of Americans. Everything changes. The Hawaiians confront Nishikaichi. This time Harada translates honestly. The truth is out. The pilot confirms his role in the attack. The islanders decide to hold him prisoner until Aylmer Robinson arrives on his scheduled weekly visit the next morning. Monday, December 8th. They'll turn Nishikaichi over to the authorities. They allow him to stay with the Haradas, fellow Japanese, after all. But they post 5 guards around the house. Nobody's taking chances now. What the villagers don't know is that Nishikaichi is desperate. His papers, the ones Kaliohano confiscated, contain sensitive military intelligence. Maps showing the fleet positions. Radio codes. Details of the Pearl Harbor attack plan. His commanding officers gave him explicit instructions. Destroy these documents before they fall into enemy hands. And Nishikaichi has failed. Inside the Harada house, the pilot tells Yoshio and Irene everything. He needs those papers back. He needs them destroyed, and he needs to escape. The Haradas face a decision. They're American citizens. Born and raised in Hawaii, they've lived peacefully among native Hawaiians for years. This is their home, their community. But there's something else pulling at them. Cultural identity, ethnic solidarity, the bonds of shared ancestry, and perhaps something more. The belief, however fleeting, that Japan might actually win this war. that the attack on Pearl Harbor might be the beginning of Japanese dominance in the Pacific, that choosing the winning side now might matter later. Whatever their reasons, Yoshio and Irene Harada make their choice. They're going to help the pilot. Monday morning, December 8th, Aylmer Robinson doesn't arrive. The islanders wait at Key Landing, watching the channel between Niihau and Kauai. No boat appears. The hours pass. Still nothing. They don't know about the maritime ban. They don't know that all boat traffic has been prohibited by military order. They don't know that Robinson is sitting on Kauai, forbidden from making his weekly trip. Worried sick about what's happening on Niihau. All the villagers know is that they're alone with an enemy pilot and no help is coming. Days pass. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The guards rotate around the Harada house. The pilot remains confined. The tension builds. On Friday, December 12th, Ishimatsu Shintani approaches Kaleohano privately. He's carrying a message from Harada and Nishikaichi. An offer. 200 yen, a significant sum, in exchange for the pilot's papers. Kaleohano refuses. Shintani disappears into the woods, unable to face what he knows is coming next, because that same night, Yoshio Harada and Shigenori Nishikaichi put their plan into action. It's dark. Late night, December 12th, bleeding into the early hours of December 13th. Inside the Harada house, Irene Harada puts a record on the phonograph. Music plays, loud enough to mask other sounds. Outside, a single guard remains posted. The other 4 guards have gone home for the night, rotating shifts. The lone guard hears the music. Nothing seems unusual. Then Yoshio Harada and Nishikaichi burst through the door. They overpower the guard before he can cry out. The struggle is brief, brutal. They lock him in a nearby warehouse, the same building, where Kaleohano had stored the pilot's confiscated pistol and a shotgun. Harada and Nishikaichi break into the warehouse. They retrieve both weapons, now they're armed. They head straight for Kaleohano's house. They need those papers, but Kaleohano isn't home. He's in his outhouse when he sees them coming. Sees Harada and Nishikaichi approaching with guns, prodding the captured 16-year-old guard ahead of them. Kaleohano watches from his hiding place as they search his house. When they turn their attention to the crashed Zero fighter in the field, Kaleohano runs. He sprints through the darkness to the nearby village, pounding on doors, warning everyone to evacuate. But the villagers are skeptical. Kaleohano's always been dramatic. Is he exaggerating? Is this really happening? Then the captured guard escapes and reaches the village. His story confirms everything. The villagers flee to caves and beaches and the hills. They scatter into the night, hiding from an armed enemy pilot and his collaborator. Harada and Nishikaichi, realizing everyone has escaped, turn to Nishikaichi's plane. They need to destroy it, strip it of anything useful, make sure the Americans can't learn its secrets. They remove one of the plane's 7.7mm machine guns. They salvage ammunition. Then they set the Zero on fire. The aircraft burns through the night, a beacon of destruction. But they're not finished. They march to Kaleohano's house and burn it to the ground. Those papers have to be destroyed. If they can't recover them, they'll incinerate everything Kaleohano owns. The house becomes an inferno. For 6 days, this has been a tense standoff. Now it's something else. Now it's war. While Harada and Nishikaichi terrorize the village, Hawila Kaleohano makes a desperate decision. He's going to Kauai. He's going to get help. It's 17 miles of open ocean. At night in a small whaleboat, against the prevailing wind, with no guarantee they'll survive the crossing. Kaleohano gathers 5 other men. They drag the whaleboat to Key Landing and launch into darkness. They row for 16 hours. 16 hours pulling oars against wind and current. Arms screaming, hands blistering. The night sky giving way to dawn, dawn giving way to morning, morning stretching toward afternoon. They reach Kauai on Saturday afternoon, December 13th. Within hours, word reaches military authorities. A Japanese pilot has crash-landed on Niihau and is holding the island hostage with help from local Japanese residents. But assembling a rescue force takes time. It'll be Sunday morning before anyone can reach Niihau. Back on the island, the people are hiding, watching, waiting, and Nishikaichi is making his own calculations. He knows he can't hold out forever, but if he can capture the right hostage, He might be able to force the villagers to give up Kaleohano and those papers. Saturday morning, December 13th, Nishikaichi and Harada have captured another villager, Kahakila Kalima Huluhulu, called Kalima. They order him to find Kaleohano, but Kalima knows Kaleohano is rowing toward Kauai by now. He pretends to search while actually planning something else. He finds his friend Benehakaka Kana Hele, Ben for short, and they sneak back to steal the weapons Harada and Nishikaichi have collected. The plan fails. That morning, Harada and Nishikaichi find Ben Kanahele and his wife, Kealoha, called Ella. They take them prisoner at gunpoint. Ben Kanahele is 51 years old, barrel-chested, strong from a lifetime of ranch work. He's not the kind of man who scares easily. Ella Kanahele is tough in her own right. Rancher's wife, mother, survivor of a hard life on a hard island. Nishikaichi jabs the shotgun into Ben's ribs. Through Harada, he gives Ben an ultimatum. Find Kaleohano or everyone in the village dies. Ben knows Kaleohano is long gone, but he pretends to search, buying time, trying to figure out what to do. Hours pass. Morning becomes afternoon. Nishikaichi grows increasingly agitated. He's been awake for days, running on adrenaline and desperation, his eyes wild, his movements erratic. Ben returns without Kaleohano, makes excuses, says he couldn't find him. Nishikaichi's patience breaks. Through Harada, the pilot delivers a new message. If Kaleohano isn't found, Nishikaichi will kill Ben Kanahele. Then he'll kill everyone else on the island, one by one, until someone gives him what he needs. Ben and Ella exchange a look. They both understand. This man isn't bluffing. He's a trained military pilot. He's killed before. He'll kill again. But there's something else Ben sees in that moment. Nishikaichi is exhausted. He's been running on fear and rage for 6 days. His judgment is compromised, his reflexes slower than they should be, and Ben Kanahele makes his decision. He's not going to die on his knees. It happens fast. Nishikaichi hands the shotgun to Yoshio Harada. For just a moment, both weapons are in transition, the shotgun moving from one set of hands to another. The pistol in Nishikaichi's boot not yet drawn. Ben Kanahele lunges. He grabs for Nishikaichi, trying to tackle him. Ella leaps at the same instant, reaching for the pilot's gun arm. Nishikaichi pulls the pistol. 3 shots. The first bullet hits Ben in the groin, the second in the stomach, the third in the upper leg. Ben Kanahele staggers, blood soaking through his clothes. The pain must be extraordinary. Any normal man would go down, would give up, would die. But Ben Kanahele is not a normal man. He doesn't fall. Instead, somehow, he picks up Nishikaichi, all 140 pounds of the pilot, lifts him off the ground despite 3 gunshot wounds pumping blood from his body, and he hurls Nishikaichi into a stone wall. The pilot's head hits lava rock with a sickening crack. Nishikaichi crumples, unconscious, maybe dead already. Ella Kanahele doesn't wait to find out. She grabs a rock, rough volcanic stone, heavy enough to kill, and brings it down on Nishikaichi's skull. Once, twice, 3 times. Making sure. Airman First Class Shigenori Nishikaichi, pilot of Zero Fighter B-11-120, participant in the attack on Pearl Harbor, dies on a small Hawaiian island, killed by an unarmed woman with a rock and her husband who refused to stay down. The entire fight lasts maybe 30 seconds. Yoshio Harada stands there holding the shotgun. He's just watched a 51-year-old rancher absorb 3 bullets and kill a trained military pilot with his bare hands. He's watched Ella Kanahele finish the job with Stone Age brutality. Harada looks at the shotgun in his hands. He looks at Ben Kanahele, who's still standing despite wounds that should have killed him. He looks at his wife Irene, who's been watching all of this. Yoshio Harada puts the shotgun under his own chin and pulls the trigger. Ella Kanahele drops the rock and runs for help. She finds the hidden villagers. They emerge from caves and hiding places. They bring Ben to the village, trying to stop the bleeding. 3 gunshot wounds. He's lost a tremendous amount of blood. He should be dead, he's not. The next morning, Sunday, December 14th, 1 week after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Aylmer Robinson finally arrives on Niihau. Military personnel are with him. So are the 6 men who rode to Kauai with Kaleohano. They find the village traumatized but safe. 2 bodies, Shigenori Nishikaichi and Yoshio Harada. one seriously wounded hero, Ben Kanahele, one unrecognized hero, Ella Kanahele, two prisoners, Irene Harada and Ishimatsu Shintani, and one burned Zero, fighter, stripped of weapons containing secrets that might have changed the war. Ben Kanahele is evacuated to Waimea Hospital on Kauai. Against all odds, he survives. The doctors can't quite believe it. 3 gunshot wounds at close range, and he not only lived but fought back hard enough to kill his attacker. In 1945, President Truman awards Ben Kanahele the Medal for Merit and the Purple Heart. Ella Kanahele receives nothing. No recognition, no medal, no acknowledgement that she delivered the killing blow, that she finished what her wounded husband started, that she saved the village as much as Ben did. It's 1945 America. Women don't get credit for killing enemy soldiers with rocks, but everyone on Niihau knows the truth. Irene Harada is imprisoned for 31 months. She's never charged with a crime. When she's released in 1944, she maintains she was following her husband's lead, that she felt sorry for the pilot, that she didn't understand what would happen. She moves to Kauai, lives quietly. In 1992, she gives an interview to Japanese television. Even then, 51 years later, she can't quite explain why she helped Nishikaichi instead of her neighbors. Ishimatsu Shintani is sent to an internment camp. After the war, he returns to Niihau. In 1960, he becomes a U.S. citizen. He lives out his days on the island he fled into the woods to avoid betraying. Howard Kaliohano receives the Medal of Freedom for his heroism, for recognizing the danger, for securing the pilot's papers, for rowing 16 hours through the night to get help, for saving countless lives by warning the village to evacuate. The Niihau incident becomes national news. Reader's Digest publishes a sensationalized version. Radio programs dramatize it. It enters American consciousness as proof of something troubling, that even Japanese Americans, born and raised in the United States, might choose Japan over America in a moment of crisis. It's not fair. It's not accurate. But it's believed. History is written by those who survive to tell it. The Niihau incident was weaponized, used as justification for one of America's darkest decisions, the internment of 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. In January 1942, Navy Lieutenant C.B. Baldwin wrote an official report on the incident. His conclusion: the fact that the 2 Niihau Japanese who had previously shown no anti-American tendencies went to the aid of the pilot when Japanese domination of the island seemed possible indicate the likelihood that Japanese residents previously believed loyal to the United States may aid Japan if further Japanese attacks appear successful. It's a damning assessment. Based on the actions of 3 people, 2 of whom may have been motivated by fear as much as loyalty, thousands of American citizens would lose their homes, their businesses, their freedom. But there's a larger truth hiding in the Niihau incident, a truth about choice, about loyalty, about the moment when you decide who you really are. Ishimatsu Shintani was asked to help an enemy combatant. He refused. He fled into the woods rather than betray his adopted home. The Haradas were asked to help. They said yes, and it cost Yoshio his life and Irene her freedom. Ben and Ella Kanahele were threatened with death. They could have given up Howard Kaliohano's location. They could have cooperated to save themselves. They didn't. They fought back instead, knowing they'd probably die. Howard Kaliohano could have stayed hidden, could have waited for the crisis to pass. Instead, he rode 16 hours through darkness to get help for people who needed him. These weren't soldiers. They weren't trained for combat. They were ranchers and beekeepers and farmers living on the most isolated island in Hawaii. But when the moment came, when everything depended on the choice they made, they chose. Back in Japan, in the coastal town of Hashihama, the family of Shigenori Nishikaichi erected a 12-foot granite cenotaph in his honor. For years, they believed he died on December 7, 1941 in the glorious attack on Pearl Harbor. It wasn't until 1956 that they learned the truth. Their son didn't die at Pearl Harbor. He died 6 days later on a small island, killed by an unarmed couple who refused to let him terrorize their home. The inscription on the cenotaph reads, "Having expended every effort, He achieved the greatest honor of all by dying a soldier's death in battle, destroying both himself and his beloved plane. His meritorious deed will live forever. It's a lie built on a truth they couldn't accept. Nishikaichi didn't destroy his plane. He didn't die in glorious battle. He died because he underestimated a 51-year-old Hawaiian rancher and his wife. He died because he chose to terrorize innocent people rather than surrender with honor. He died because, in the end, courage doesn't come from training or weapons or military might. It comes from knowing who you are and what you're willing to die for. Today, Niihau remains the Forbidden Island, still privately owned by the Robinson family, still closed to outsiders, still preserving a way of life that has vanished everywhere else in Hawaii. The wreckage of Nishikaichi's Zero is on display at the Pacific Aviation Museum at Pearl Harbor. Tourists walk past it every day. Most don't know the story behind it, but on Niihau they remember. They remember the week when the world came to their isolated island. When neighbors turned against neighbors, when 3 people had to choose between their ethnicity and their home, they remember Ben Kanahele, who took 3 bullets and kept fighting. They remember Ella Kanahele, who finished what needed finishing. They remember Howard Kaliahano, who rode through the night, and they remember the terrible lesson the Haradas taught them, that loyalty can't be assumed, that heritage and citizenship don't always align, that in a moment of crisis you have to choose. The Niihau incident was America's first ground battle of World War II. No armies, no tanks, no naval bombardment, just ordinary people forced to make extraordinary choices. Some chose right, some chose wrong, and an island that wanted nothing to do with the war became the place where it began. On December 7, 1941, a Japanese pilot woke up after Pearl Harbor in a stranger's home. A week later, he was dead, and America learned that war doesn't stay confined to battlefields. It comes home, even to the most forbidden islands.